Hello, everybody. It is Pseudo with MMOBuff, and I am joined by two really fabulous people. In fact, this is one of the interviews I have been waiting for this entire weekend. I am joined by Jason Garber, and I am joined by Nobby from Carmageddon Reincarnation. Now, I've got quite a few questions for you guys, but I have to get the ones that were asked by the fans out first. So, obviously, will there be grandmas?
Certainly. This goes without any question at all.
And will there be gotchas?
It's not gotcha, it's the plow.
Okay, so one of the things that fascinated me about Reincarnation, besides the fact that it's Carmageddon, is the fact that this is an old game brought forward to the future. Yes. You have reinvented it, but why did it take so long to do this? Most people say a sequel should come out, a couple years afterwards.
Well, there were a couple of sequels afterwards, but they weren't done by us.
Right.
So, well, basically, I'll do the quick answer on that one.
Okay.
As far as it's quick. So, back in 97 and 99, we did the first two titles, Carmageddon 1 and Carmageddon 2. So, and that was done for a publisher. Mm-hmm. And back then, the reality of the industry was that you were basically developer-publisher relationship where you would get money to develop and they would have the ownership of the IP. Back in those days, the publisher did a lot of units, as a lot of people played it back then. And then they decided to work with somebody else, which was really devastating to us because we felt we were part of the, the whole process. And they simply decided to, they did so many things with it that we didn't, we had a different vision for it. But what happened was that we continued to work on, work for hire and stuff like that for other titles. And basically SCI reversed itself or bought Eidos or something happened. I'm not really sure what happened, but basically the IP went from SCI to Eidos. And then a couple of years later, Eidos was purchased by Square Enix. And that's when we sort of said, well, you guys are probably not going to do anything with it. Why don't we start discussing if we could get it back? And I have to say we were, I've heard a lot of developers trying to get their previous IPs and not succeeding at it. So we've been very lucky that we could. And that process alone with SCI going to Eidos, Eidos going to Square Enix and us negotiating, it's easily 10 years. So that's the big part of why it's only been until now that we've been able to do the remake. And of course, since we did Kickstarter, since we got the IP back, we always believed in the IP. We always thought this is really great. Now, of course, there's a lot of naysayers that will say, well, maybe the IP isn't valid anymore, or whatever. So the first step for us was, okay, let's see if there's still people willing to, have an interest in this title. That was the Kickstarter kickoff, basically. That proved to be very successful. And then the second thing was we did an iOS and Android version, which we released and did about over 3 million downloads. So we started to realize not only is it still valid to us, but it's also valid to a lot of gamers out there. And that's when the whole Carmageddon Reincarnation things really started to get alive even more. And of course, from the moment you decide to do that, the scope of the title changes, forms and everything. And that basically where we are today. It's been a long road. We were very drunk. No, we were just very happy last night when we did the early access, right? Yes, I'm not hungover, so I'm perfectly fine. So.
Okay, so that's the short answer.
Yes.
What's the long answer?
I'll pass it back to Jason, and he can expand on it. No, basically, we got it back after all that time, and it was our baby, and we were absolutely over the moon to have it back, where it belonged. We knew we were the only people who could ever do the next Carmageddon justice, so we always had talked about it as something that maybe one day, but never really believing that it would actually happen, because if you own an IP, you generally you don't get rid of it. You just hang on to it. You never know. It's got a value. One day, you can do something with it. So to be able to actually get it was just fantastic.
So this is a reincarnation. I love the fact that Car is in reincarnation. It just makes me think of Mizpah, one of my co-hosts. What is it that you guys are making different? What steps are you doing to ensure that it stays fresh without people just sitting there going, this is just a rehash of something with better pixels?
it's the it's just piling on even more humor, piling on even more stupidity and silliness to what we originally made the game. Because technically we're able to do so much more now than we could then. We can now give you, instead of something, a repulsificator that can just repulsificate pedestrians or cars, you can now like rip the scenery out and throw all the furniture around the scene, things like that you couldn't actually technically do. But also we're still as daft as we ever were, so we still had loads of stupid ideas and we're still having them every day, so we can just chuck them in there and make sure that we take the whole thing to another level of silliness, really.
Okay, so you guys are going through early access.
Yes.
How is that working out for you?
Well, to be honest, early access has gone through some ups and downs over the last months, looking at what's been happening in the industry. And to be honest, when we started to work with early access, we had to evaluate what that exactly meant.
Right.
And so what we did was, which is our vision, is that being sort of around for about 20 years as a development studio, we looked at it as the old-fashioned demo. You make a game, you get the essence of it right, you get the gameplay as far right as you can, and you basically give it to the potential buyers, and if they like it, they'll buy the title. So our approach to early access was just make sure that the core of the game is fun, and that you can actually enjoy the game up to its fullest at the state of the development, and then work from there. Now, when we did the early access release, basically for everybody yesterday and for the Kickstarter backers 2 weeks ago, it basically proved that we were sort of thinking right, because I've seen early access where there's a lot of negative feedback about whatever the fact that may be. But I think in general our feedback has been very positive, and most important, and this is something that I really appreciate, is that a lot of people who've given us the feedback say we're really capturing the old feeling of Carmageddon 1 and 2, which is, you can't get much better than that, that you actually almost, it's like people, how they remembered Carmageddon 1 and 2 is being, oh yeah, it's exactly like it is. I bet if they look back at those games, that may be completely different to what they remembered. But
right.
But Carmageddon Reincarnation is really giving people what they're looking for, and that's already showing through the early access process. Now, of course, one of the things that we did when we released, for instance, we call it the early access, which was for the Kickstarter backers, is that we did a hot fix and an update, and the response was really positive about it. So what we're seeing right now, because it's also a learning process for us, is that regular updates during the early access period, we've got to communicate a lot, do proper feedback routines and everything. That will make the early access as successful as it can be. And up until now, we've not really been disappointed about how it's going. So.
Now, you've mentioned about having a silliness and having the daft side to everything. With everything that you have seen so far in early access, is there any particular moments or comments or things that have been made that make you go, yeah, that is why we made this game?
Well, it's just that the feedback that we're generally getting is that people are having the same reaction to it that we have while we're developing it. And we know when a Carmageddon is working is when you'll get a group of people crowding around somebody who's working on it, and they're testing it, and something bloody funny happens, and they just call a crowd of people over to see what's going on. And for the people who are now getting to see it, to be having exactly the same reaction to it, is what we're hearing. And it, in a way, it's not really surprising, because that's how we always worked in developing the game. If it was making us piss ourselves laughing, then our our fans were going to do the same thing. People who love Carmageddon, they're going to love the same stuff that we do.
Yeah. So with your cycle, you've got early access going. What's next?
Well, next is a lot of hard work to get it to final, which it's going to be out before the end of this year. We're hoping around autumn. We're trying to get it earlier as possible, as early as possible. It is, after all, our 20th anniversary this year, so in August.
Wow.
So we're trying, but let's say autumn. Basically, regular updates. Trying to get the specs as clear as possible, as low as possible. Keep adding good stuff, especially the multiplayer edition. Most of the people we spoke to at various shows are always mentioning to us, "Oh, I played the game, and it was one of the 2 games that I played. But it was either Quake, and then if we had enough of that, then we would get our cars out and start doing the multiplayer." And that's really what we see as one of the big updates coming up, probably before the E3, where we add the multiplayer, and the game will just come alive even more. We've got some really funny game modes in there that we think will just be perfect for the multiplayer.
Will you be allowing the fans to develop mods to add to it? Are
Yes.
you letting them build levels, or maybe giving them a city?
Well,
or
if you check the earlier access version, it's already in there. It's just marked off right now. So
We haven't even provided any tools yet, and the guys who've got it have already started modding it. An awful lot of the way that the game is put together is using Lua scripting, and the guys are already getting their right up to their elbows in that stuff, and have been already created their own power-ups. Which is just
they're beating
brilliant.
us to certain. We have ideas, and they're beating us to
exactly.
it.
There's stuff that we've got in the pipeline, and they're getting there first. So which is just brilliant. But eventually, we want it to be the case that we'll be releasing. So we'll be releasing the the actual what do we call them? The
Carmageddon.
Yeah, well, no, Carmageddon is the thing. But the little windows that you pull up to actually adjust stuff.
Yes.
Okay, that's what they're called. The little windows you pull up to adjust stuff.
technical term.
We'll have those, and also Acolyte, which is the tool that the guys use for actually populating levels. Pulling stuff in from 3D packages, and actually, so from a full level to accessories to cars, to pedestrians, all this stuff eventually will be available for the public to use.
Yes. Well, the community kept the title alive for better part of 10 years.
They're called imps.
Imps.
The
Not
little
that
window
fast.
there.
That was only 15 seconds, so that was pretty cool. But the community kept the title alive for a very long time during that sort of limbo where we weren't involved with the title. And so when we got the title back, it was the obvious thing was to say, and this is where the name just Carmageddon. Why not?
Yeah.
It's perfect for it. So
It's a very good name.
yes.
Now, before I let you guys go back to having an exceptionally good afternoon and
Yes.
evening,
Yes.
just one question. What is the most unconventional thing that you have done so far at this convention?
At this convention.
At this convention. We'll get to others the next time I sit down with you.
Well, like I said, it's been a bit of a hard week for us, sleeping wise, because we also had GDC last week. So we drove over this morning, and it was an interesting drive to get over here at 5 in the morning, trying to be sober while driving. This was and my problem is that I tend to talk a lot when I'm sort of overworked. So I was the musical jukebox this morning during the drive here with unknown songs, really. So
It was great. Songs he doesn't know the lyrics to, that he wanted me to hear.
Yes.
So he'd just make the lyrics up as he went along.
Yes.
It made it entertaining. I wanted to listen to Radio 4, but no, I got a medley from
Aftermath of being
Mr.
drunk
Garber.
is one of those moments in your life when you question, what does that lyric really mean? So, not part of the convention basically, but the drive up here was as unconventional as it could be.
I've of course spent all day with people running up to me saying, I really would love to rim that rhino.
Yes.
Which is...
So
that's
wasn't
been
that
special.
invented also during one of those stupors of aftermaths? Yes. Rimming rhinos.
So basically what we learned is you're hardworking,
Very hard.
and that pretty much sums it up.
Well, yes, and we play even harder, but...
You got to find that right balance.
The balance is always that.
But thank you so much for chatting with me and for sharing this information with me. Is
You're
there
welcome.
anything you want to tell everybody out there?
Well, enjoy the game, really. I mean...
Buy the bloody game.
yeah, sorry.
Go on.
No, buy the bloody game.
Yes.
You heard of
Buy the game, yes.
And again, we'll hopefully have some more special news for you later, but, Swagzilla can only do so much. Toodle pip.